Firstly, thanks for coming and doing this again.
Thanks for inviting me.
I have the urban financer with me today, Mr. Franklin. Do you know what? Yeah, when we had you before, like there was such a big response for you to come back. So there was always like just that thing of like we need to just try and find a way how we can make this happen again on quite a regular basis. If you ask me, I think like at least I would probably say at least 7 to 8 months we should have a good old reasoning, even if it's about nothing, because maybe there could be something that comes of it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
How are you?
I'm good. I mean, as you say, the world doesn't stop.
No.
Especially the world of finance. Money makes the world go around, and it's true. I think the economic situation over the past since we last met, there's been a lot of turbulence. Economy affects money. And so it's been a busy sort of few months for sure. But I think, we're resilient. We'll get through it.
So what sort of changed from the last time I've seen you? Actually, in fact, for people that are unfamiliar, people that are new, can you like just give us a quick reminder of what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a private banker and I look after entrepreneur clients. So my sort of primary role is to help my clients sort of look after their wealth, whether it's borrowing money, investing money, protecting money. So really and truly, it's kind of a personal relationship with individuals who happen to be business owners, and I'm their banker.
Okay. One of the last episodes that we did as well, we was talking about parking tickets.
We were.
And we had a big conversation about it. You just told me what happened to you,
so
bro?
I think when I left the show, about 2 weeks after that, I got a parking ticket.
Oh my God.
And I thought, Chucky's cursed me. I've got the Chucky curse or the Dan curse. I think it was Dan who said he treats parking tickets like flyers. My days of that are like way behind. Like I still get them, but like it's not ridiculous. Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Actually, in fact, recently I did have like I did have a speeding thing recently. But you know what? Yeah, as I said, that is now for me it's a rarity. Before, when I was younger, I was a lot more careless. I was a lot more careless when it came to parking tickets. But again, I was a lot more careless when it came to money and finance and stuff like that. And that's why even now I think it's good to have a conversation with you, because it's like one thing that I find really interesting is we as people or as humans we have to deal with money every single day. But the only time that you really hear people talking about money on a regular basis is musicians, isn't it? Like rappers talk about money regular. But there's still like a big taboo about talking about money though. Do you get what I'm saying? More so talking about our own money and our own finances and stuff. And I feel like we need to have more honest conversations about how we can either make more for our money or budget our money. Do you know what I mean?
And no, that's a good point you raised. So I think hopefully today's conversation we can perhaps go a bit deeper into this whole thing around wealth and wealth generation. The last time I was here we talked about credit, which is some of the basic fundamentals, but essential really, just to make sure that at least your credit is good as a foundation. But as you say, I think a lot of people have this taboo about talking about money unless you're a rapper or you're an entertainer, in which case the more money you talk about, the more followers you seem to gain. Now, the reality is, in society, there are more people who are not rappers, entertainers, superstars, rock stars, than there are of those that are. So actually, there's a lot more people earning a wage, and therefore they know their limitations. They don't get lump sums every few weeks or months when something big happens. They have a paycheck which they have to sort of look after month by month. So it's not comfortable when somebody's looking at somebody else who's sort of throwing money around. Meanwhile, they know they've got £16 in their bank account, and someone's talking about a bust-down watch that cost £100,000. It's not comfortable, but it also may be a society class thing, because for the upper class, a lot of people are privately educated when they're young. They know their school fees cost £30,000 or so, sometimes a quarter, sometimes a year, depending on where you go. So they have the concept that actually it costs to get through life. Whereas I think for most people who don't have that upbringing, you don't really talk about money. Right? You don't pay when you're in high school. You don't pay when you're in primary school. The only first time you get the concept is at university. So it's almost a delayed reaction for most people.
Where does that start? Like how, from your perspective, where do you think that started though? Like how has it become this way?
I mean, it's a good question. I think firstly, we spoke about this last time about the fact that this isn't taught in schools. So for the most people, if you don't have parents who've been, had the privilege of having advisors or wealth passed down through generations, everybody's trying to make ends meet. Okay, and by doing so, nobody sits around the family table on a Sunday where mum and dad say, right, let's talk about money. Let's talk about finances. What have you been spending your pocket money on? What are you doing to grow your money or protect your money, etc.? That conversation doesn't exist because I think for the majority of people, it's all about just getting through, right? So I think there is definitely a part of society where money is talked about, right? Because, for example, a lot of people are waiting for inheritance to land when they're 18 or 21 or 30 or whatever. So for some people, they know exactly about money. And so whatever they're doing in life, they plan accordingly. Most people don't have that benefit. Yeah. So actually, when money isn't spoken of in the home, it's not taught at school, your friends don't really talk about money in their pocket. They talk about how much it costs to buy a pair of trainers or to buy a car or a watch or jewelry. But what else do they talk about when it comes to money? For me, the message I really want to get out there is that wealth and finance in general follows you through your life stages. Okay, so there's wealth generation, wealth accumulation, and wealth preservation.
Start again.
So wealth generation.
Talk to me about that.
So when you're in your 20s, 30s, you're generating wealth. Okay, a lot of people will look at somebody like Jay-Z and say, "Oh man, my life isn't good because I don't have the art pieces on his wall for £2-3 million, or I'm not wearing a Richard Mille for several £100,000, or I don't have the assets he's got." That's fine. You're generating wealth. Generating wealth is effectively starting a source of income. Getting your pay slip. If you have a business or something, starting the first few bits of turnover, getting customers, you're generating. Okay, so when you're in your 20s and you've got credit cards or overdrafts or finance or whatever, life isn't over. It's very normal to be in your 20s or even 30s where you're still generating wealth. And so by the very nature of that, you might have outgoings that outweigh your income. So we need finance in order to sort of get by. That's normal. Okay. Now, clearly, we spoke about this last time. Being responsible is the key here to make sure that everything's well maintained.
That's a massive part.
Absolutely. But it's not uncommon for 20, 30-year-olds to have debt.
No,
it's not uncommon. I think a lot of people look at themselves and think, I've got a credit card, I've got a loan, and therefore I'm worse off than somebody else because they don't have any of this. It's very normal that going through the wealth generation stage, you are still trying to find your feet, right? So in your 20s and your 30s, you're generating wealth. Okay. Then wealth accumulation is when you're perhaps in your mid-30s, getting to your 40s perhaps, where you start creating sources of income because you've gone through a decade or so where you've been generating money, income. Now your income's starting to outweigh your outgoings and your expenditure. You've got surplus income. You can use that surplus income now to go and buy an investment property. You can use that surplus income to start a small pension or invest in something here or there, etc. You've got surplus income. You're accumulating. You're now adding it all together. And then you go to the wealth preservation. Once you've built it all up, you then preserve it. So if I give you an analogy, think about building a house. Whilst you're generating is when you're digging the foundations. Okay. Whilst you're accumulating, the house, you've got the actual bricks and mortar, the house is standing. And when you're preserving, you build your fence around the house. That's the way to look at it.
But there's also a lot of people that surely don't get to that space of like preserving wealth, even when they get to a certain age and stage in their life because of circumstances before, maybe in how they've run their life, or maybe certain things that have happened before, right? Yeah,
absolutely. But if you notice there, I didn't mention any figures. So there's nothing that says you need £50,000 to start preserving wealth, or you need £100,000 to start preserving wealth. It's really a life cycle. I think the message really is that a lot of 20, 30-year-olds are walking around hanging their heads because they've got a credit card or two outstanding. That's not the end of the world. It's not uncommon, right? I know lots of people who are now extremely wealthy who started off that way because you need finance, which is why it goes back to credit, getting good credit in order to get you up and running. Be responsible, of course, but don't walk around thinking the world is over because you're not having art pieces on your wall that cost £1 million.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean? I think people compare themselves now to their idols and feel inferior.
Well, yeah, I think that might be that is probably one of what. There's so many positives and negatives with like social media. There's loads of positives. I think one of the negatives is that literally what you've just said. Like before, I always say before, when I was growing up, all I really knew was about what was around in my community and a little bit outside of that. And then maybe like stuff that was happening in America with artists and stuff like this, yeah. But now, obviously, like social media has made everything a lot more closer. You can see, you know, people from wherever that lived in different areas or whatnot. And like everyone's obviously showing the best parts of their life and all of these type of things, which then makes you think, oh, okay, shit, like I don't have this, I don't have that. And even myself, I went through a stage where I was kind of like, it wasn't about social media, but it was more about me in my mind thinking to myself, all right, cool, like there's certain things that I do not have that I feel like I'm supposed to have right now, but then having to then rebuild the perspective of understanding that, hold on a minute, I can still get these things if I want to get them, but it's just about working smart. Do you understand?
It's timing. So I think there's this perception that, you know, society has a way of telling you what you should have, right? When you were at school, you need to have the nice trainers. When you're in your 20s, you need to have a nice car. When you're in your 30s and 40s, you need to have a nice house. The society has a way of telling you this. The problem is the voices behind society probably don't have it themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
But as you say, you're sitting there thinking, I haven't got it. Yeah. Everybody else must have it. But that's not true. You know, I think society has changed over the years. 30, 40 years ago, I've got clients who were buying houses for £300,000-400,000. Today, some of those are worth over £10 million. We have to accept that we're not in that era. So we can't walk down the road and buy a £200,000 house and expect it's going to be worth £10 million in the next 10 years or so. Right? You never know, but it's unlikely. So the reality is we've come from a different era. So actually, you're finding that a lot of people are not moving out their mums and dads as early as they used to be. Right? But that's okay, because as I say, you're going through phases. Right? You're either generating, you're accumulating, you're preserving. There is no figures, it's all individual. It depends on how you look at it. So when you don't have any assets and you're thinking, you know, life isn't worth it, well, that's not true, because there will come a stage where if you do work hard enough, and look, nothing happens by accident. Nobody becomes successful by mistake. I think you have to be in the right place at the right time, and the circumstances have to fit. But equally, if you're not applying yourself and you're sitting there hanging your head low because you haven't got what you think society thinks you should have, then you're not going anywhere, really.
Let me ask you this then, yeah? What, like, because you deal with people that, you know, some of your clients and stuff like that are literally on in terms of class or on a, you know, on a higher scale in that sense, yeah? So in your interactions with some of these people, yeah, do they have their thing in their class where they feel like they're supposed to have certain things? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because surely, like, you know, I think like it's obviously it comes down to, you know, maybe where like a period of where you're at in life and who you're around or whatever. But surely those people have those same type of things that they go through as well.
Absolutely. So I think it's a society thing, right? If you live on a street where all your neighbours drive a Range Rover and you have an Audi, you're going to feel a way about it. You're going to think, well, hang on a second, are they all doing better than me? Or it may be that you just prefer an Audi, but everybody from the outside will look at you and think, okay, you're the odd one out. Absolutely. I've got clients who have to maintain a certain lifestyle, right? Come rain or shine. And sometimes that could be to the detriment, because upkeeping a lifestyle costs money. Yeah. Right. And if you're an entrepreneur, sometimes there are droughts. There are periods where business isn't doing so good. And so having to maintain that lifestyle, unless you've been planning in advance, then you haven't got the immediate funds. And so that's where they start pulling resources from left, right, centre to try and make ends meet. Of course. For example, there gets to a stage where if people aren't sending their kids to private school, then you might be looked down on as if, okay, well, why wouldn't you want to give your children the best start in life? Yeah, right? Yeah. But actually, for a lot of us, that wasn't our reality. But yet we've still managed to find our way through life. So, of course, I think that happens at every stage. The key really is that you have to remind yourself that do it on your terms and at your time. All right. If you do it for you, if it works out, you're to thank for it. If it doesn't work out, there's no one else to blame. It's just you. Do it for you, not because of what's expected of you.
Would you say there's an element of managing expectation as well?
Absolutely. I think, you know, some of the people you've had on your show recently talking about, I think relationships is always an interesting one. When you talk about, you know, the fact that people don't discuss finances openly, and who pays the bill at the end of the restaurant, you know, or the date or whatever else. Absolutely, you have to set expectations, right? If you are trying to court a girl or a guy or whatever, and you set the bar up here, but you can't maintain that bar, you've already failed. Because actually, for the rest of the time you're together, the bar is only going to go one way.
Trust me,
right? But I think the reality is, people feel if they don't set the bar there initially, they may not grab attention, right? Don't start something you can't maintain.
Yeah. I think that's do you know what, bro?
So true.
Seriously, I think that is like a massive issue in and amongst our community as well, you know.
Yeah.
People set the bar so high,
Yeah.
and then can't just live up to it. And usually it's all about exterior, innit? And it's about
Absolutely.
impressing people or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's about trying to have these things or doing whatever it is to try and get this particular person or to look a certain type of way, and then constantly having to do that all of the time.
Yeah.
It's mental.
It is. And especially when you consider that, you know, as I say, a lot of us are on a salary. A lot of people have income which is limited. And so if you know that there's limitations to what you earn, then you should cut your cloth accordingly.
Yeah.
And don't start a life you can't maintain.
Yeah.
And set expectations that are only going to go one way. And so, of course, we have to be realistic with ourselves. You know, if you want to buy a property, get on the property ladder, it's good to dream and think, I want to live in £1 million mansion, a £10 million mansion. But actually, if you're earning £35,000 a year, it's going to take you a while to get there. You know, NSG have that song, you know, want to make $1 million, 9 to 5 isn't an option. Well, actually, 9 to 5 is an option.
Of course it is.
Absolutely is an option. So let's not forget that actually there are some CEOs.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, of course.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because there is this thing where people feel like, oh, you know what? I don't want to have a job because if I don't have a job, then, you know, I can't be a millionaire. I can't be successful. I can't talk on that for me.
So look, I think first and foremost, you know, we have a responsibility, I think, and platforms like this is great in showcasing what's possible. Okay, that there are careers beyond entertainment, because when you switch on your TV or your laptop or your phone, you see more entertainers than anything else. So people assume that these are the only people making money. Well, that's not true. Think about all the services you use, all these brands who get these celebrities or influencers on board. Think about all the people behind the scenes who are actually owning these institutions, right? Ownership, equity. You know, I think Beyonce talks about equity, pay me in equity rather than a check or whatever it is.
Definitely.
Ownership, right? Think about the people who are owning these brands that we are all flocking to. They're the ones cutting real checks, but they're not in front of the camera. Okay, so if you're a CEO of one of these companies, you're getting paid well. If you're a financial director of one of these companies, you're getting paid well. If you start your own business, it may not be a consumer sort of facing type of business, but you're still getting paid well. So I think it's really understanding, you know, what the potential and the possibilities are out there of generating income. There's a study done in America, mentioned on CNBC the other day, which says the amount of money you need to earn to be classified as rich is around £100,000 a year. How does that sound to you?
That sounds a bit mad to me. £100,000 a year.
Low or high?
That's low.
Right.
What, to be considered in which country?
So this is in the US, but remember,
Even in America.
US is a big state, so that's around $100,000. So in the UK, you talk about £81,000.
Is that saying that if you earn 100,000 a year, you're in the top 1%?
You're in the top
10%?
bracket. So I guess
You can't be in the top one.
No,
That's
you
got to
can't
be
be in the top
5.
one. No.
But it's
Yeah,
just like,
you're
remember,
in
you've got mass affluence, you've got, you know, high net worths, you have ultra high net worths. So there are definitely levels in terms of once you're getting wealthy.
Of course.
But just in the general term of being rich or being affluent or being upper class, they suggest it's around £100,000 a year.
I mean, in some senses, I could see how, I mean, depending on where you live in America, yeah. So if you live, for example, if you live like in Manhattan, in New York, Manhattan or whatever, I could see that that's just quite low.
Yeah.
But if you're living in like certain other parts of America or whatever, and you're earning 100,000, because remember, America's massive. You're earning 100,000. There's a lot you can do with that, especially considering that their average wage around 28,000 or something like that.
Well, look at the UK. So the UK average wage, if you're looking at full-time staff, is around £35,000.
Yeah.
Men, females, joint together. So £100,000 actually is a long way from that.
Yeah, of course.
When you consider the average. So the whole point of average is there are a lot of people below that, but equally there are a lot of people above it. So yeah, I mean, it all comes back to the fact that, you know, do research, understand that there are, you know, jobs out there are careers out there that you can earn a very, very good wage. And a lot of this is in the public domain. You know, think of any one of these companies you associate with and just look at what their CEO is earning. Right, and go back to NSG and say, actually, you can make $1 million doing a 9 to 5, because these guys and girls do 9 to 5s and they make multi-millions, you know, depending on what their employment contracts is and etc. Performance related bonuses, etc. But it does exist, so let's not assume that you have to be a rapper or an entertainer in order to make that kind of money.
I also think right now is probably the best time to have that overstanding that you can do that, which is going into social media.
Yeah.
That's the positive side from my perspective.
Sure.
But the positive side is that now I feel like Let me go back to actually when I was younger. Yeah, when I was younger, I didn't know about the different types of jobs within the creative industry. I didn't know them.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily exist to me. All I knew was the artist, and that was it. And obviously they probably had a manager, and that was that. Now I feel like with social media and conversations on all of these different types of things, you have a great understanding of the different types of roles that, or the different components that put all of this together. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not just necessarily one person who comes out, makes a song, or you know, whatever it may be within the creative industry and ends up blowing off and going all the way into the sky. There's like a whole bunch of people in and amongst that who have genuine careers and that are paid handsomely, a lot of them. Do you get what I'm saying?
The problem with that is how many people have visibility to what those people earn behind the scenes.
Oh, you wouldn't know what they are.
You wouldn't know.
No.
So I think, again, when...
It just looks like a regular job.
It looks like a regular job. It looks like you're a runner. It looks like you're just somebody behind the scenes. You're part of the extras. You're not really important. So there's that education piece. And I think, yes, we do have a responsibility to make that more visible for people growing up, to really understand the careers and the options that are available to them.
Can we just mention, because that's another thing, not feeling important. Yeah. Like, that is so subjective because importance, just because everybody knows who you are doesn't necessarily mean that you're important.
No.
You could be the least important person in that component, and everybody knows you. You could be the person who nobody really knows, but you play an extreme importance. I'm sure that you deal with many clients who work or is in amongst something, a company or whatever it may be, who is not the loudest voice in the room or may not be the biggest personality in the room, but you know what they say essentially goes.
I mean, it's so true. You know, it's always the question around, as you say, the loudest person in the room isn't necessarily the richest or the most influential, etc. That is something that you have to tackle individually. I think growing up, it's good to maybe get this practice in terms of really understanding substance. I talk about substance a lot. The image is one thing, substance is another, right? Because anybody can portray an image, but actually what substance do you have beneath that? And a lot of people don't feel important because they want that attention to correlate with their substance. And a lot of the time, you know, this is social media, the age of social media. You know, what I do doesn't make headlines, but it changes lives, right? And what I do is something that will be around forever, right? Money and finance will be around for a while. Okay, maybe not forever, but who knows? The thing behind that is that it doesn't grab headlines, right? But every day there are people I'm helping whose lives are changing. And so for people growing up, if you look at somebody like a banker, you think, well, there's no respect as a banker. Nobody recognizes you as a banker or whatever. You have to really be comfortable with yourself that actually when you go home, that you know you've done a good day's job and you've helped the people you want to help, right? And that's your purpose in life. That has to be something really personal, because unless you're in the public eye, it's really hard to get the recognition. And I think a lot of people associate an amount of followers or recognition with the actual value you're creating in society.
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of people look more, they see social currency more than anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But as you said, you know, we're in an era where actually anybody with the right mindset and the right opportunities can make money. And it doesn't actually matter what field or sector now. You know, if you look at the articles that came out a few days ago around Fortnite, you know, children are in their bedrooms
I saw that.
making millions.
The world
for people who don't know.
Right?
Go on, sorry.
So, you know, that to me says that there's an opportunity. You know, there's a market now. There's a ready market for whatever you've got in your head. So long as you can package it right and find the right way to channel it, there is a market.
Definitely.
You know, and we've never really had that opportunity before. So yes, whilst our parents and their parents before had access to, you know, assets, properties and things at a lower price that we probably can't access it at, we, on the reverse, had the opportunity to make income far beyond what they ever did. So for me, new money is fast outpacing old money. So long as you can make it sustainable, because the old money has lived a long time, right? New money has a short lifespan, 3, 4, 5 years, and you're out of fashion, you're out of favor, and your sort of hype dies down. So unless
can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because you lost me just a tiny bit in terms of what you're talking about with new money and old money. What's old money?
So old money, I think, really is grassroots. You know, that's inherited money over generations. So you have a lot of people who, if you look around London, for example, families who are the freeholders to a lot of these properties in the commercial high streets. You go somewhere like Mayfair in central London, and families own the streets. They are the landlords, effectively, to all these brands that, you know, we love. Now, whilst that remains under the family ownership, they're going to make income for as long as somebody sits in their shop or their store or their house or whatever, right? And they have the rights to review what the leases they charge on people who are renting these spaces forever, right? So old money, there's some old money that's just going to live forever.
Yeah, of course.
Until ownership changes hands or whatever happens.
Yeah.
New money now is the new age of, YouTubers and influencers and entrepreneurs and people who are able to amass a following of 10 million on YouTube or whatever and monetize that very quickly and now start making millions of contracts from here and there and everywhere. Whereas in the past, in order to set up a business and make a couple of £1 million, you're talking a few good years of trading.
Yeah.
Whereas now you could do
that
something that goes viral, find a good manager to help you monetize that, and you're making, a good, several hundred thousands or whatever the contracts might be. So you can attain money much quicker now, and there's a lot more of it in circulation because as the world sort of develops, money becomes more available. It just depends on where it's distributed,
of course,
and whether you're part of that circle where the money is being distributed
exactly,
or you're a spectator.
Which is a deep conversation.
Where are you, Chucky?
Where am I?
Where are you?
What, in terms of where the money's being distributed? I need to know.
Are you part of the distribution or are you spectating?
No, listen, I'll tell you what, all I'm saying is I need a bit more of it, to be honest with you. But no, I'm good. I'm actually all right. Financially, I'm in a much better space than I thought I would be.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I went through a time where had a lot of money, lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then I was really careless with with money as well before. Remember, we had this conversation before where I was talking about, thinking that, everything was just free essentially. So I was just taking money from banks and all of these type of things and just being really careless with it until when I started to understand, that life is a game where if you can play it right, you can get more out of it.
Yeah.
Then when I started to understand the codes, I started to play the game a little bit better, and I started to understand things a lot more better. Which is why I want to ask you actually, budgeting tips. Before, that was one thing that I never used to do at all. I didn't budget at all, and now I budget. I understand that there's an element of sacrifice that comes with budgeting and that as well, and I feel that sacrificing through budget can help you more in your future. If you don't, then it takes away more from your future. Yeah. Sometimes. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Do you get people that approach you, and especially some of your clients that come to you for budgeting tips? And if so, where do you usually go with it?
So, good question. I think budgeting, again, is something that's very individual. So I think there's a lot of self-help tools out there, apps and things you can download to help you budget. But ultimately, it really comes down to your discipline. Right? How disciplined are you? How much do you want to achieve this goal that you've set out to achieve? You're right, you're going to have to start making sacrifices in order to achieve your goal. For me, I think it has to be visual. You have to be able to see where you're adding value by having this budgeting plan. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to save money to buy a house or to buy a car or to have a wedding or to buy an engagement ring? Whatever it might be. You need to be able to see that vision very clearly in order to be disciplined and set yourself some pretty strict guidelines around it. So, I have my own budgeting tool that I use, right? It's not public, it's just something that I use. It's a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet, believes me, grows every day because sometimes I go home and I think, let me add another column here for X, Y, Z. Right?
What does it look, what does it consist of? How does it?
It consists of pretty much everything. It consists of monthly, bi-monthly income, etc. All the income sources effectively, right?
Okay.
Then all my committed expenditure. So things like any finance, mortgage, etc. It consists of any sort of general expenditure as well. So things like utilities and mobile phones, whatever. So every outgoing I have is listed. Okay. And I even forecast as well sometimes. So I look at thinking, okay, if I acquire such and such in such a time, what's that going to cost me to service? And so then I forecast it along and say, right, okay, well, that's going to reduce my income by X amount. So my spending money is going to go down to this, right?
Blouse and skirt.
So there's no mistake.
Yeah. So yours is really intricate.
It's deep.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And, perhaps maybe in the position I'm in, I've got the benefit of knowing certain things that helps me do that. So look, I wouldn't say that I'll give that to somebody who's just trying to start out budgeting.
No.
Have a comprehensive, Excel document that helps you see into the future. But I do have clients, funny enough, who come to the table and say, well, here's my spreadsheet of my, my income or expenditure forecast, my cash flow. And you look at some of these and think, wow, it's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Because they've planned everything. You know, they're including the value of their assets, so their properties, how much is worth today, how much it might be worth in 5 years' time, how much their mortgage might be down to, you know, what other assets they might acquire within that time. That's very complicated.
Wow.
Right? It's very
Years ahead.
but it's not a coincidence. It's not a mistake when you see wealthy people getting wealthy through planning, right? But on the basic level, listen, have a system whereby you know exactly what you're being paid. If you're on a monthly basis or weekly basis, whatever the case might be, have a system so you know what that looks like. You also have to have pretty clear sight of what your outgoings are, right? So before the money even touches your account, you need to know how much you've got left. That's the basic maths, right? You need to know how much money you've got left once all your bills are gone. From that portion is when you decide, right, okay, how much of this do I save? How much of this do I spend? How much of this goes towards travel? How much of this just, you know, general entertainment and food and, you know, going out, etc. That has to be also separated, and that you then put to the side and say, right, okay, I'm going to invest, or I'm going to start an ISA, I'm going to start a saving pot where I put something into. And whatever that figure is, set up a standing order so that you don't have to go in manually every month to move it, because we all get very lazy and tempted not to move it because you think, this month, don't worry about this month. I'll do double next month. And then you never do double next month. Right?
When you start doing that, that's when it starts going pear shaped. To be honest with you.
No, correct. So there has to be discipline. And you know, there were points where before I got into my spreadsheet, I used to just keep it in my notes on my phone. And, you know, I just realised that the notes was getting longer and longer. So I thought, right, let me transpose this into an Excel document where you can track it properly. So look, take your phone, right, and just start right at the top: income, expenditure. What are you left with? What was your net disposable income that you've got to yourself? Yeah. And then the question for everybody is really, how do you reduce your outgoings? How do you reduce your expenditure? You know, I say to people, shop around. You know, if you've got the benefit of having good credit, shop around and get the best deal. Right? If you've got a loan or credit card and you're paying a high level of interest, there's no reason why you can't refinance that.
Of course.
Right? And refinancing it simply means reduce your outgoings. Because if you're paying 10% interest and you refinance to something that's 3 or 4% interest, you're saving yourself a lot of money. Right? So shop around and, you know, be active. Look at your finances and say, right, could I get a better deal somewhere?
Bro, like, I think for me as well, that was something that I wasn't doing for a long time, actually. I was probably paying like a lot high interest on a lot of things, not necessarily going back to it and renegotiating and trying to find out. And I think that there's for a lot of these companies as well, for me, from my perspective, it's not like they come to me and say, oh, by the way, just let you know, like, you know what, we can reduce this for you now. They'll just keep making you pay it. They'll just keep making you pay it until you do something about it. If we don't know, then and you're none the wiser, they'll keep making you pay.
Look, as much as I hate to say it, but banks and financial institutions are commercial entities. They have to make money. The more money they make, the more profitable they are, the happier the shareholders are. So there's no incentive for them to pick up the phone to you and say, hey, Chucky,
that's true.
By the way, you're paying us too much interest. Would you like to switch?
Yeah.
I think they brought in...
I would have thought there would have been smarter ways in doing it, though, by saying, okay, I mean, maybe that is a smart way of doing it, but maybe they could have said, all right, cool, I'll tell you what, we'll ring you and we'll tell you that you can pay less, but we'll offer you more. And then what that does is that increases your temptation sometimes for some people.
And that's probably terrible advice. That come and borrow more money and will reduce your interest. Because then for people who are easily tempted, they'll take the more money. You know, as I said before when I was last here, debt has to be repaid back at some point.
Of course, but the reason why I say that though is that it has to be repaid back. But the more that you pay, it might be, the interest might be less, but the consequences could be higher if you don't pay, which means more money for them. It just means that the risk. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's about risk and reward. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think, you know, there would be a major scandal if banks started ringing around and saying, hey, by the way, if you would like a lower rate of interest, would you like to borrow some more money? I can imagine headlines being made out of that very easily. You know, I think never borrow more than you need unnecessarily, because ultimately you're paying back unnecessary interest. If you have the ability to, you know, if you come into some money and you look at what am I doing with this money? What's the best way of utilizing this money I've got? You know, do I invest it? Do I pay down some of my debt, or do I do other things with it? Always have that conversation with yourself. You know, I say this to clients even. If you have a windfall, you sell a business or you sell something and all of a sudden you've got some money, before you take any action, you know, bring up your spreadsheet or bring up your phone or wherever your notes are and have a look at where you are. You know, last time I was here, I said a piece of paper, assets and liabilities on either side. have a look at that before you take any action and think, right, what is the best way of making the most out of this money I've got right now? Before you do anything with it. Because it could be that actually, if I could reduce this debt by a fraction, my monthly payments will come down, meaning I've got more money I can save each month. Or actually, there's this great opportunity that I can invest in, which will give me returns greater than the interest I'm paying on this loan. So therefore, it balances itself out. So there's conversations you have with yourself.
Maybe you may not be the best person to ask for this, but I'm sure that there'll be some expertise in this in there somewhere.
Yeah.
There's been conversation that I've seen a lot, like on social media, about from certain types of people anyway, discussing what is better to invest in, a house or jewelry.
Oh, it's a good topic.
From your perspective, talk to me on that.
Okay, so look, first and foremost, the values are completely different for most people, right? I think houses for the general population will be the biggest investment you ever make, right? Because for most people who are earning, if you're looking at, and I always like to look at the median, the average wage, because that's where the line is for most people. If you're earning around 35, 40,000 pounds, let's say, you're going to buy a house, that's probably going to be your biggest investment. Watches, however, and I'm a big lover of watches, that's sort of come into a world of its own very, in the recent years, because the demand for watches has grown rapidly, so rapidly that actually, if you look at the second-hand market, what watches are going for compared to retail is insane, right? Is insane. So for me, a well-diversified investment portfolio, however you call it, is having a bit of everything here and there if you can. Okay. Property as bricks and mortar is a safe and sound investment. Why? Because for sure that over the years, properties go up and the values are maintained, if nothing else. You can always borrow against that asset. Okay, it's not very easy to borrow against your watch.
No.
Right, you can take it to a pawnbroker and they'll do something crazy and give you money, but a property is something that really and truly is for you and the next generation potentially. Because say for example you buy a house worth £500,000, you have children. In 20 years' time, that house is worth now £1 million, and you've paid off your mortgage. Your children want to get on the property ladder. You take out equity release mortgages on that property to give them the deposits. They've started out in life.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Simple. It's not always as easy to realize the equity in a watch.
Yeah.
That said, you can buy a steel Rolex Daytona at retail value for about £8,000.
Yeah.
The resale value is around £16,000. There's no tax to pay on that.
No.
So instantly you can make a gain. So for me, if you have the option to have a bit of both, do it.
Well, I feel like that maybe speaks a little bit to like where we are as a society at the moment, in a sense of looking for a quick flip a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I feel like in terms of investment now, I can't speak for everyone, and maybe again this is a class thing, I don't know, but sometimes like when I listen to conversations that people have when it comes to investment, it's like a lot of people don't feel like they even have the patience. They don't articulate it this way. Sure. It's just from my understanding for the long-term investment. So the quick flip always seems a bit more sexier. Do you get me?
So look, and I totally recognize that. I think a lot of people haven't got the time or the patience to invest for the long term. So that's why when you're investing, you really need to take a look at what your goal is. I think the reason why watches have become so popular is because people are seeing how easy they can be flipped and the money people are making on them. But unless you're buying a watch at retail price, then you've probably lost some of that value anyway, because somebody else who got access to the retail price, the Daytona, at £8,000, £9,000, has sold it to you for 16. So you're sitting now on a watch that costs 8, but you've bought it for 16. How long will it take you to make some value out of that now? Right. So some people are entering the market at the top end, and there's no further cream. Right. So you've kind of come in a bit late to the scene. So that's why I think you really have to look at what your goals are, because yes, you buy a watch and it can hold its value. The problem is that once you start customizing the watch,
when you bust it down,
you then have to really question what the actual demand is going to be
for that
for the resale market.
Well, that's the thing. Usually when people talk about the bust down watch and all of that type of stuff, straight away I always think, the bust down looks sick, in the picture, especially when you're out with the man them gang and all of that. But then, but for the actual investment conversation, that's definitely not the sexy move.
No. No, you're right. I think you have to, and they do say that. I think manufacturers do say that once you start making your own customizations to the watch, there's no longer warranty. They kind of wash their hands off that watch and say, right, we have nothing to do with this anymore because you've changed the feature of the art we've created.
Yeah.
So that's a personal thing. Once you start customizing it to that level, I think you have to be prepared to almost discount the value quite dramatically.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to come and buy it from you, including all the money you've spent on it to add those features.
Yeah.
Right. So it has to be clever investing, for sure. There are watches out there you can buy now that, may not appreciate in value overnight, but for sure will hold its value if nothing else. But please do your research. You have to know what you're buying.
Do you feel like, right now, to me, there seems like there's a lot of conversation about investing in, remember when Bitcoin was a thing,
yeah.
Like everyone was on this Bitcoin thing or whatever, But like, do you feel that like a lot of people are sort of jumping into the idea or loving the idea of investing into just pretty much anything without really knowing what they're investing in?
Doing the research.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it goes back to the point you made around people wanting a quick gain.
Yeah.
It's about, well, if I've got £10,000, quick, what's the best thing I can do right now to turn that into 20,000, right? And sometimes, you have to understand that the higher the risk, the higher the likelihood that you may not get anything back from your investment.
Yeah.
Right. Generally, higher risk, high reward, but it's called higher risk for a reason. So I think, yes, you're right. People are looking for the quickest way to double their money in quick time. And that is perhaps leading people into places where you wouldn't necessarily go. But I think, my advice would be only invest what you can comfortably afford to lose if you're going into those scenarios.
Yeah. Just lastly on this particular subject here, with houses in particular, right now it seems like a bit of a weird time, like when it comes to
property.
And like loads of different things in it, purely because of Brexit. And no one doesn't know exactly what's going to happen when it comes to October the 31st, I believe. Before I asked you like how that sort of affects you in terms of property, from your understanding, like, is it a good time to buy? I speak to like estate agents and stuff like that, and they're just like, it's fucked for us right now. There's nothing happening, blah blah blah. But on the same token, I do hear about like some of the houses are dipping a little bit.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? You can come in and snap, but then
100%.
some people say, some are dipping, but they could dip extra low. So, but then I can't imagine it doing so. From your perspective, talk to me on that, because surely you must have some clients that come to you.
So I do a lot of property transactions. I probably talk about properties every single day. For the past year or so, there's definitely been a slowdown in the intensity of property purchases from where I'm sat. Okay, so I can't say that for the entire market, but certainly for the place where I'm in, there's definitely been a slowdown. Estate agents are an interesting bunch of people to sort of talk to, because they have an incentive, right? They need to sell a property in order to make their money.
Target.
What I've seen in the market though is that, comparing now to last year, for example, last year when somebody found a property, they wanted to act now, right? We agree a purchase price, we exchange contracts, we complete, done. What I've seen this year is people are haggling around to bring the price as low as possible. And when they do agree a price, they kick the can so far down the road, so completion is 6 months down the line, or as long as they possibly can, to delay things, because I think because of the state of the economy, people are really trying to game the system to see what's going to happen. At one point there was talk about a reduction in stamp duty, which you pay when you buy a new house. And if that happens, that will save a lot of people money. So they were trying to kick the can as far down the road to see if that would be a possibility. But obviously now that we're not sure that's going to happen, people are getting on with things. So is it the right time to buy property? Well, I think it depends on what your situation is. If you're buying your first home, or you're buying a family home and you need to move your current family into a better place, then it's always a right time to buy, because your circumstances command that you do something about your situation. For people who are looking to invest, I think it's definitely a buyer's market, in the sense that if you see an asking price, more often than not you can bring that down. Right, so nobody's really going in and paying asking price unless there's crazy demand for a particular property, in which case the seller just won't accept anything less. But I think people are definitely going in and bringing asking prices down. And another thing, for people who are aware of property transactions, is valuations. So as a banker, before I lend you money, I need to see what your property is worth. So you might tell me your property is worth £500,000. When I get it valued, it comes back at £300,000. So all of a sudden, the money I was going to lend you, I might have to reduce. Or in some cases, I can't lend you at all because the loan to values are too close. So that's affecting a lot of transactions as well.
Yeah.
And that happens once there's the sentiment in the market that we're not really sure what's happening. So a lot of valuers are down valuing. So I think there's been a lot of turbulence with property.
How has the current climate sort of affected your job at the moment though?
So to me personally, I think it's been that frustration that you do a lot of work up front. When I meet clients who are looking to take equity out of the property, looking to buy properties, looking to transact, but then they're delaying things. And so, transactions are not completing as quickly as they should because, they're trying to buy as much time as possible. So you do a lot of work up front, but there's nothing to show for it because until it completes, well, that's great. So if I have a target of doing £10 million of debt a year, but I haven't actually given £10 million out. I've got it agreed and it's all ready, but they're not taking the money. It doesn't count until it happens. So that has been really frustrating. And I think everyone's kind of feeling the same, that you do all the work up front, but no one's taking the money because they're kind of waiting around to do this or to do that. So that's definitely affected me directly. Yeah, I would say.
Like, I want to go a little bit more on the scale of like with dealing with young people and money and stuff. Yeah,
sure.
And like, we spoke about this before about things that are not really spoken about in school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think that we could do as people, to kind of help give an understanding to young people about money?
So I think we have a responsibility. When I say we, I think anybody with any influence has a responsibility to try and pass on some knowledge or educate, the next generation. So as I said to you, what I do doesn't grab headlines, but it changes lives. Every day I'm doing things with people that is life-changing. Part of that is working with children. So this year alone, I've probably spoken to over 1,000 kids, whether that's going into schools and addressing 200 of them or 300 of them or one-to-one.
Did they ask you questions?
Incredible amounts of questions. Endless questions.
Like what?
Everything. I had one particular student who came to the office with her list of questions.
Sick.
After I went to a school.
Really?
And she was asking me things that I had to search deep in my soul.
Do you know how sick that is though?
I mean, listen, I've got all the political answers to a T.
Yeah.
When she starts asking you things like, are you successful? How do you feel about your happiness?
I'm
thinking, right, okay, I can't talk about economy here. Right, quick, think quick. What do I say? Yeah. So they ask questions. So I think, just by doing that, it's giving them access. Because I think, a lot of people try and set up things with schools. I don't know if you've ever tried working with a school, but it's very hard. It's difficult. It's very hard to get into a school and set up a program or do things like that to help them. They've got all this kind of curriculum pressures and things like that, budget and things like that. But I think children just need to hear more from people with knowledge that they can pass on. So when I go to these schools and I'm talking about money or finance and simple things like, budgeting or, don't worry about buying things you can't afford yet and wait and things like that. It's simple things that they come to you and say, okay, so, how did you feel when you couldn't buy this or couldn't buy that?
Yeah.
For them, it's very much about what they can touch and feel, right? So is that emotive subject, is that emotions attached to money where, the first question they always ask is how much do you earn? What car do you drive? How much is your watch? It's the visual things they can see first, right? Yeah. Which gets their attention. But actually, when you remove that layer and you talk to them about, look, for me, this is personally speaking, I feel that my purpose in life is to help as many people as I can. Yeah. The money is a consequence of that. That comes as part of it. But when I wake up every day, it's not about checking my bank balance. It's about, right, who can I help today? And so it's really finding a passion and belief in what it is you want to do and following that wholeheartedly. The money will come, ultimately. Think about all these big inventors and creators. They all set out to try and change a way that we do things in life. As a result, they're millionaires, billionaires, whatever else, right? Yeah. But there's a passion. So it's kind of passing that sort of knowledge on to children and saying, right, okay, first and foremost, budgeting for kids is important.
Massive.
Understanding money, the importance of money.
That's something, a conversation I always have with my brothers.
Yeah. I
talk to them about, like budgeting money and ways that they can sort of save their money and all of these different things.
Yeah.
Just like some just basic things as well, like, opening up a separate bank account where you can't see nothing.
Yeah.
Like that can make all of the difference. Because if you have a bank account where you can see everything, and you've got, like, for me anyway, personally, if I had a bank account where I've got my current account and I've got my savings account. It's all together and it's on my phone. I got my phone apps and that. If I go and I can see everything that's in my savings, if something's looking a little bit low, then I'm tempted to go and dip.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? If something else is over there, I don't know what's in there. I can't see it. And I think that you get to a point where you're like, if you've been doing it for so long, you kind of don't even want to know now. Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? You've left it there. You just kind of just want to leave it until maybe there's a really big purchase that you want to go and make. And
so I think, look, when we're talking about children, it's really the basic financial literacy. It's things like explaining good debt versus bad debt, explaining credit, explaining bank accounts, how to run a bank account, simple things like cash accounts, debit cards, and just really just helping them to get to grips with, okay, if I make money, we're talking about generating wealth. When I start generating money, these are some of the things I need to look at. Before I go and buy that big car or whatever, I need to make sure that my finances are in order. I don't overcommit myself too soon. I wait until I'm in this position before I start committing. Because look, our generation, we've made so many mistakes, right? But every generation makes mistakes. I just feel that with ours, it's costly because debt has been so cheap. We've all been filling our boots with it. So everyone's got some debt they're carrying around in their closet. It has to be paid back at some point. And I feel that, unless we do it, the generation coming up now, most people who are in the upper class or in the wealth bracket, before they even turn 1, there's a bank account for them.
I know. Fuck, bro.
Right? There's a bank account for them with more money in it than probably most of us walking around. And that's before they're even walking, right? So apply that to your current situation and think, right, okay, if I'm going to have children, I want to set them up. We have to understand that we need to raise the bar for every generation. So what are we doing now in order to raise the bar? Because when we have children, they cannot go through the same struggles we went through.
No.
Simple period. They cannot go through that. So what are we doing? Are we setting up trust funds? Are we setting up pensions that they're going to benefit from? The sad part about all of this is inheritance tax. Do you know much about inheritance tax?
Well, discuss that actually. Yeah. Because I know a little bit about that. Obviously, I know that. For example, if a family member, say my granddad, for example, my granddad lives in a very big house. I know that when he dies, if he leaves that to somebody, then we have to pay some form of tax on that. Yeah. And what is this? What is it? It's like 50% or something.
So effectively, that is what you have to do. So if I use, let's say, a single person as an example, so you have when you die, whatever your assets are, the net value of them. So let's say you have a mortgage, take that away, etc. Whatever the net value is, there's a lifetime allowance of £325,000. Okay, so that if you add it to your assets, and anything above £325,000, the government is technically accessible to 40% tax.
That's nuts. That is crazy to me.
So when I talked about the stages of wealth,
that's quite new as well. No,
it's been around for a while.
How long? How long a while? More than 20 years.
It's been around my entire time in banking. It's been around. Yeah, it's been around for a long time. So when you're thinking about wealth preservation, so the reason why I'm talking about this is we're talking about how we raise the bar for our children and the next generation. But a lot of clients start thinking about how they preserve the wealth, and a lot of it is inheritance tax planning. When people say, oh, I don't want any debt, I want to die debt free, well, great, the taxman's going to get their hands on 40% of your wealth, right? Whereas if you've got debt, think about what you can use that debt for. So say you've got a house that's worth £1 million and you borrow £500,000 against it. Not that you need it, but you use that £500,000 to set up, trust funds or to pay for school fees or whatever, right? So that you've been able to use the value in that asset before you've even sold it. Like you've put the asset to work. So you've borrowed money against it to use that to set up all these different vehicles. You set up trusts accounts for your children, which will benefit only them, so nobody else can come and take the money or whatever else. Yeah. And that money will help pay for school fees, deposit on houses, etc. When you pass away, they can't tax you on that 500,000 because that's debt. So then your estate has reduced.
Okay.
Right? So it's half of what it's worth, except you've managed to use the value in that to do good before that time. So, there's financial planners who will talk you through all the vehicles around. But the whole point is, if you're thinking, I'm just building all my assets nice and debt free, and one day it's all going to go to my kids, well, do consider inheritance tax, because
that 500,000 debt goes down to whoever inherits it, right?
Well, no. So you can normally what happens is the estate, which is what they call your wealth once you pass away, assets can be sold. So once assets are sold, all the debts are repaid, and then the net values is whatever you use for whatever purpose. So what you find is a lot of property transactions happen via probate. And that simply means somebody has passed away and the family members are now deciding what to do with it, and they sell it because they say, well, granddad or grandma's passed away. We want to sell the house and use the money in the house to do something with it.
Word.
Right.
So I'm assuming that like wealth preservation is literally the fundamental conversation that happens in your office.
Correct. Well, it depends on what stage they're at. I've got clients at all different stages. You'd be surprised. There are some still in their 30s who are aggressively generating wealth. Who are working every hour in the day, who are exposed to their eyeballs in terms of commitments, but all for good purpose, all because they're trying to get a business off the ground or develop a business or to build the empire. You have to start from somewhere. So for them, they're not thinking about investing. They're not thinking about preservation. They're thinking about, right, how do I create maximum value in this thing I've started? And it might take 5 years. It might take 10 years. But then naturally, they'll come to that point where they start accumulating and say, right, okay, I've done all the hard work. I can start now adding these things up and start creating different sources of income. Before I start thinking about, right, pensions. What do I look at for my children? Do I set up trust funds? Do I pay for school fees or do I not? Do I start paying off debt or do I keep it in place because it offsets inheritance tax? So that conversation, it really is tailored to where you are in life, which is why I want everybody who listens to this to understand that you have to assess yourself by where you are today. Don't compare yourself to those who've gone through the motions and are now walking around with all these big assets whilst you have none, because you're probably still generating, and that's okay.
2 questions for you.
Yeah.
What, from a money perspective, what's the most important thing for you?
Understanding the consequences of wealth is the most important thing. Understanding the consequence of the money you have, what you use it for, the decisions you make with it. The consequence is the most important thing. If all you're interested in is buying assets with no value or wearing all your wealth when you leave the house, then you do need to kind of think about, the long term. Perhaps maybe you need to kind of reassess some morals or whatever else. But it's an individual thing. I think we talk about the consequences of a lot of our actions, but nobody ever associates consequences with wealth or money. Right? Money is power.
Word. Are you happy?
Am I happy? I think happy is not a destination, it's a journey. And I feel that, as I say, I think I want to help as many people as I can. And that doesn't always mean, one-on-one sessions here and there, but sometimes I'm doing things behind the scenes that perhaps nobody knows about, but it's benefiting tons of people. It's interesting because there's a lot of people who are probably in the social domain now whose nephews or brothers or sisters I've probably come across in some capacity, but they'll never know that.
Yeah.
Right? They'll never know that. But that's okay for me.
Do
you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I don't sort of stand on a pedestal where I shout from the rooftops and say, hey, guess what? I've helped your family member. I've helped your family. No. But there, and a lot of people live through you. Don't forget that. So even just by, I have this thing now where in my head, I always say to myself, right, be the best of yourself. That's the radio I've got playing in my head right now. Whether I'm at the gym, I'm in the office, wherever I am, be the best of yourself, because people are living through you. People are watching you doing what you're doing, being inspired, and they may not speak. A lot of people will be inspired by you, but may never say a thing. But they're watching your movements and bettering themselves as a result. So if I maintain the best of myself, then I know that for sure somebody somewhere is benefiting from
Definitely.
it.
Are you going to the doctors as well? Remember, Callum, I told people I'm going to start asking people this question.
Am I going to the doctors? Of course I'm going to the doctors.
It's important. I tell people all the time.
I've got private medical healthcare.
Okay, so you go and you make sure everything.
I've got the app where if you have an issue, you kind of dial in and you have a chat with them.
No way.
Yeah. Do you know what? I did that once. It was major awkward. Because it was just like it was a GP.
So what? Hey, wait! You just so you open up the app, and then you it says,
you basically
do you have a problem?
What the problem is, correct? And then it sort of you go through the questions, and it connects you to a GP appointment. Let's say an hour's time. You dial in, and it's like, yeah, hi, okay. Do you want to show me that problem you've got?
Is it?
Yeah. So it's like I think it's called Babylon or something like that.
Okay.
Babylon Health or something. But yeah,
does that come along with your private healthcare? Or is that
it does. Yeah. But I'm sure you can access anything these days.
Yeah, of course.
So that's my kind of cheat code that I use if I need to go to the GP.
That's good, because obviously finance is important, but looking after yourself is equally as important.
Without you, nothing else happens.
Exactly. Yeah, bro, I feel like I love speaking to you. I feel like I learn a lot from you, and it's I just think on top of all of that, aside from all of that, I've known you for a little while, but not properly. Like we've just seen each other from a distance or whatnot. But I just love seeing people like you, you know, doing what you're doing and making a difference and stuff like that, and doing it like quite like making a big impact but quietly. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you know, what I was saying before, that you have the big voices in the room, and then you have the people that are a lot more quiet, but they have a thing around them that like really makes things tick. And what you do is very important, and just coming and having this conversation, you know, and speaking to the audience and stuff like that, like really counts for something. So bro, I proper appreciate it. And we should, as I said, you know, every period of time just sit down and have a conversation. You're going to be my guy that I come to when it comes to talking about money.
And look, that door is always open. I think I'm always happy to have a conversation with you and your followers and your listeners. Because I feel, as I say, we have a responsibility. So you know, you can charge me to that you know, when you call, I'm happy to come down.
No doubt. And if there's anything as well that you feel like is a good, important thing for people to know, or a good conversation to have, then feel free to hit me, and then we'll discuss another time when we can do it and get it done.
I'm always working on things, and there's lots of things in the pipeline at the moment. So you know, at some point, I'm sure there will be a moment where I say, look, I think this might be important for people to know. But look, pleasure. Thank you for having me back here.
Thanks for listening, everyone.